Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always. What fascinating corner of the world are we exploring today?
Well, today's deep dive takes us into the fascinating world of Hindu cosmology.
Oh, intriguing. And what specifically from Hindu cosmology are we diving into?
We're going to be exploring the Treta Yuga.
The Treta Yuga, okay. And to guide our exploration, it seems we have a rather interesting source text on our hands. For what I understand, it's a German text focused on spiritual teachings related to the Treta Yuga.
Yeah, and it's packed with incredible stories and insights that really make you think.
I'm intrigued. So for those unfamiliar, maybe we should start with unpacking the concept of the Treta Yuga. It's not just about stories, is it?
Right, it's much bigger than that.
The Treta Yuga represents a very distinct phase in Hindu cosmology, a specific period within these vast cycles of time known as yugas.
Okay, so like big chunks of time, each with its own kind of flavor.
Exactly. Each yuga has its own unique characteristics, its own energetic signature, if you will. Think of it like a journey through different seasons. Each one has its own distinct energy and impact.
Okay, I like that, the seasons. So how would you describe the Treta Yuga in that sense? What's the vibe of this particular season?
Well, imagine a spectrum of virtue with the Sat Yuga, the Golden Age, at one end. That's pure spiritual light, a time of complete harmony and connection to the divine.
Okay.
The Treta Yuga, however, is where we start to see a subtle but significant shift. It's like the sun slowly setting, casting longer shadows as the day progresses.
So it's not a sudden plunge into darkness, more like the light's getting dimmer.
Precisely. Virtue is in decline during the Treta Yuga, and we begin to see the emergence of conflict as humans drift further from their true nature.
I see. So what causes this shift? What leads to this decline in virtue during the Treta Yuga?
Well, that's where our source text comes in. It centers around a key figure named Maninder, who's said to have a very specific spiritual purpose in this yuga. He's basically sent to guide souls back to Sat Purush, the true being.
That sounds like a pretty important job.
It is, but there's a catch. He's bound by a promise to only use love and wisdom, never force. He can guide, but he cannot compel.
Interesting. So no pushing or prodding, just gentle nudges toward the light. And he's up against some pretty tough customers during the Treta Yuga, right? This is where the decline in virtue part really kicks in.
Precisely. And one of the most formidable figures he encounters is Kal, a powerful entity who embodies negativity and illusion.
Oh, so this is where things get interesting.
Indeed. You see, Kal represents everything that pulls humanity away from the divine during the Treta Yuga.
This Kal character kind of reminds me of the snake in the Garden of Eden, tempting humanity away from their true nature.
It's a very apt comparison.
So we've got Maninder, this beacon of wisdom, trying to guide souls back from the allure of Kal. But he can't force them. It makes you think, what does real power even mean in this context? Is it about control or something deeper?
That's a question that lies at the very heart of Maninder's journey. And it's a question we'll explore further as we delve deeper into this fascinating text.
Well, I'm hooked. Let's get into it.
One anecdote from the text that really speaks to this question of power is Maninder's encounter with a skeptical figure named Dharam Rai.
Dharam Rai. Okay. Tell me more about this guy. What makes him so interesting?
Well, Dharam Rai is completely caught up in the material world, deeply invested in outward rituals and dogma.
Ah, so he's all about the show, maybe missing some of the substance.
Exactly. He represents those who mistake those external practices for true spiritual understanding.
I see. Form over essence.
Precisely. And Maninder, in his wisdom, tries to gently guide him toward this realization.
How so? What approach does he take with someone like Dharam Rai?
He uses this really powerful metaphor of a lion and an elephant.
Okay, I'm intrigued. There's that symbolic language again. I love how these ancient texts are packed with metaphors. So break it down for me. What's the significance of the lion and the elephant?
So Maninder explains that even though an elephant is physically much larger, it's often seen trembling in fear before a lion.
Right.
The lion, in this case, represents the glory of Sat Purush, that true, essential divine power.
And the elephant, it symbolizes those who, even with all their outward displays of piety, are still ruled by fear. They haven't fully embraced their connection to that divine power, the lion.
Exactly. It's a powerful image of how true spiritual strength isn't about physical dominance or social stature. It's about aligning yourself with a force far greater than yourself.
Which can be a very humbling experience, admitting that we're not the biggest, strongest thing out there.
Absolutely.
You know, it makes me think about those times in life when we cling so tightly to certain routines or beliefs, not because they truly resonate, but because they provide a sense of security or control.
It's a very human tendency.
It is. And like you said, it can prevent us from confronting those deeper, often uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the universe.
Yes, and that's what makes Dharam Rai such a compelling character.
Yeah.
He becomes a kind of cautionary tale, a reminder not to get so caught up in the doing that we lose sight of the being.
Right. The doing versus being, that's a great way to put it. But does Dharam Rai get it? Does he understand what Maninder's trying to tell him?
You know, that's the interesting thing. The text doesn't explicitly say. There's this intriguing ambiguity.
Ah, so it's left open to interpretation.
Precisely. And I think that's intentional. Because spiritual transformation, it's not always a lightning bolt moment, is it? It's often a gradual unfolding, a slow dawning of awareness.
True, it's a process.
It is. And who knows, maybe those seeds of doubt that Maninder planted were enough to spark a change within him eventually.
Yeah, you never know. But it's interesting you mentioned this idea of spiritual transformation being a process, because Dharam Rai isn't the only one who undergoes a transformation in this text. We also have the story of Vichitrapat.
Ah, yes, Vichitrapat. His story really highlights how Maninder's teachings, while deeply philosophical, can have a very real, practical impact on people's lives.
So Vichitrapat, he's an ordinary guy, right? Just trying to navigate life like the rest of us.
Exactly. Imagine a man burdened by worry, someone who hasn't quite found his footing in the world.
Okay, relatable.
He has a chance encounter with Maninder and finds incredible solace in his words, a sense of peace that he's been longing for.
And this newfound peace, this shift in perspective, it doesn't go unnoticed, does it?
Not at all. In fact, it's his wife who first notices a change in him. She sees it's not just a fleeting good mood, this is a deep inner transformation. And naturally, she's curious. What's brought about this remarkable change in her husband?
So he tells her about Maninder, and then this is where it really starts to get interesting, because it's not just about one man's transformation anymore. It starts to ripple outward.
Exactly. Vichitrabat's wife is so moved by the positive change in him, she feels compelled to share Maninder's teachings with the king.
Wow, so it's spreading like wildfire.
Right. But it's not just gossip. It's this profound truth that resonates so deeply that it transcends social barriers.
And the king, what's his reaction to all of this?
Well, the text suggests that the king, known for his wisdom and openness, is intrigued. He sees the genuine transformation in Vichitrapat, a man he knows and respects, and it piques his curiosity. He begins to see Maninder as someone worth listening to.
Okay, so we've got this thread of transformation running through these stories, but something tells me things are about to get a little more confrontational. The source mentions a showdown with King Ravana. That's a pretty big leap from skeptical scholars and everyday folks.
It is, and Maninder's encounter with Ravana is perhaps the most dramatic example of the Treta Yuga's central conflict, this clash between spiritual light and encroaching darkness. Remember, this is the age where that veil of Maya, of illusion, is getting thicker. And Ravana, he embodies that, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. He's like the poster child for ego and worldly power in Hindu mythology. So paint us a picture. What happens when these two forces collide?
Well, Maninder, true to his nature, seeks an audience with Ravana. The text describes him arriving at the palace gates, this aura of serenity about him, completely unfazed by the grandeur and might surrounding him.
And Ravana, I can't imagine this unexpected visitor receives a warm welcome.
Well, let's just say that Ravana isn't exactly known for his patience. Even the gatekeeper cautions Maninder about the king's fiery temper. But Maninder, in his unwavering way, insists on delivering his message. It speaks volumes about his courage, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's like he's saying, look, my message is more important than your ego or my fear. But there's a twist, right? Something about Ravana's queen.
Yes. Yes, this is where Mandodari enters the story. Unlike her husband, she displays a remarkable openness to Maninder. The text even suggests that she recognizes a certain spiritual light within him. It's a subtle but crucial detail, wouldn't you say?
It really is. It makes you wonder, can true insight ever be fully extinguished, even in the darkest of times?
It's a question worth pondering. Now, as you might imagine, the meeting doesn't go quite as Maninder might have hoped. Ravana, enraged by what he perceives as disrespect, challenges Maninder. And this is where we get that incredible anecdote about the straw shield.
Okay, yes. That's the one that really stuck with me.
Ravana, in a fit of fury, draws his sword ready to strike Maninder down. But Maninder, he simply raises a shield woven from ordinary straw.
Oh, I love this. Can you imagine being a fly on the wall in that room? I mean, the tension must have been so thick you could cut it with a sword. Well, maybe not that sword.
Right. And Ravana, as you'd expect, is outraged. He sees this as a mockery, this pathetic attempt to deflect his might. But Maninder, unflinching, explains that true protection doesn't come from physical barriers, but from aligning yourself with a higher power, with the divine will itself.
And that's where he challenges Ravana to pierce the shield, right?
Exactly. And the text actually leaves it open to interpretation whether Ravana actually strikes the shield. But ultimately, the physical act is irrelevant. The true power lies in the challenge itself. It's about exposing the limitations of ego and brute force when confronted with unwavering spiritual conviction.
Such a powerful story. And you know what? It's a theme that echoes throughout history, isn't it? Think of Gandhi's philosophy of satyagraha or Martin Luther King Jr.'s principles of nonviolent resistance. It's about meeting force with compassion, refusing to be drawn into the cycle of violence.
Precisely. And it's a powerful reminder that true strength lies not in domination, but in our ability to connect with something larger than ourselves, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds.
It really is. So where does this leave us with the Treta Yuga? I mean, we've got this decline in virtue, the rise of figures like Ravana, who represent that descent into ego and conflict. Is there hope? I know the source mentioned a prophecy.
It did. And it's a crucial element of this cyclical understanding of time. The prophecy speaks of Ramchandra, a divine figure destined to confront and ultimately vanquish Ravana, restoring balance to the cosmos.
And this is the same Ram from the epic Ramayana, the one who builds that incredible bridge to Sri Lanka, the bridge that some believe is still out there.
The very same. And that mention of Ram's bridge in our source text, it's fascinating, isn't it? It connects this mythical story to a real-world place, blurring those lines between myth and reality. Whether or not one believes the bridge to be a genuine artifact from the Treta Yuga, it certainly sparks the imagination.
It does. It makes you wonder what other remnants of these ancient stories lie hidden beneath the surface of our modern world. It's like we're putting together this giant puzzle and we're just starting to uncover the pieces.
We are. And who knows, maybe those pieces can offer us guidance as we navigate our own modern-day struggles. After all, we're living in a time of increasing conflict and illusion ourselves, aren't we?
We are. So what you're saying is the stories of Maninder, of Dharam Rai, of Vichitrapart, and yes, even Ravana, they're not just entertaining myths. They're reflections of our own internal struggles, our own potential for both darkness and light.
Precisely. And the choices we make, the values we prioritize, they determine whether we succumb to the allure of Kal or embody that unwavering spirit of Maninder, navigating this world with wisdom, compassion, and an unyielding commitment to truth.
It really makes you think. This deep dive into the Treta Yuga has given us a lot to ponder. Which path will we choose? How do we face the Ravanas in our own lives, both internal and external? It's a journey, that's for sure. And it seems like the Treta Yuga, even though it's this ancient concept, has a lot to teach us about navigating the complexities of our modern world.
It certainly does.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the Treta Yuga. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those deep dives going.